Christine, how's teaching this semester?
Oh, teaching is going very well. It's going very well, Olafare.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, no, I'm enjoying it. So I'm teaching criminology and sociology to both nursing students and criminology majors. So yeah, it's the semester's going by quickly. We just got through our first exam on criminal law concepts. So that was kind of fun to go over. Yes.
Awesome. I think the most I've been exposed to law is through constitutional law.
Oh, sure.
Um, yeah, and this was in my undergraduate years, studying cases like Grutter and Bollinger. I think Bollinger. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But yeah, it's really fun. Really fun.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that the law offers so many useful frameworks that we can apply to everyday life. So, beyond just the core doctrinal elements, I think if you're able to transpose a lot of what you learn in legal subjects, to everyday life scenarios, it makes it all the more interesting. So.
For sure. For sure.
Everyone, hi. I hope that you are all doing very well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to join me. I have to say the fact that you are here on a Saturday already tells me how ambitious you are and how dedicated to your own learning and self-enrichment that you are. So truly, thank you for being here. Now, before we actually get started, I wanted to engage in a little bit of a mini exercise with you all. So, I hope that you can actually all unmute your mics so that we can engage in this exercise. If you could, please. Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Awesome. Okay. So I want you all to actually repeat after me. I have the power. Yes. So I have
the power.
The power.
The power.
To be anything and all.
To be anything and all.
Because
To be anything. So I have the power to be anything and all because I am.
Because I am. Because I am.
Power. Great. So let's do it again.
The power.
I love it. Great. So I have the power to be anything and all.
I have the power to be anything and all. I have the power to be anything and all.
Because I am power.
Because I am power.
Okay, let's say it together. I have the power
to be anything and all. Anything and all. Because I am power.
I have the power to be anything and all because I have the power. I have the power to be anything and all because I am
power. To be any power.
Okay, great. So is that committed to your spirit? I have the power to be anything and all because I am power. Good.
Yes, it does.
Excellent, excellent, because that is the truth, right? You are power. You are all sources of power. And so there is nothing that you can't all achieve because you do have the power to make it happen, and that exists within you. And so, I want to say, Olafare did a very excellent job introducing me, so I'm not going to waste your time reintroducing myself. But I should say who I am, right? In this moment, who I am actually does not matter. Who you are and who you must be and who you are being This is ultimately what matters. Okay, I could sit here and tell you, oh, well, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a humanist, I'm a professor, and I'm an educator, and I love uplifting people, but what good does it do for you, right? So that you can take my words more seriously and be inspired? No, actually, the goal is for me to teach you and to inspire you, right? To be inspired by yourself. All right, this is the goal. If nothing else today, I want you to walk away from today's talk to be inspired by yourself. Okay? And another thing that I want to mention as well is that, I can, spend the next hour or so talking at you, but my pedagogical style actually involves being conversational. So this is conversational. This is a conversation between you and I. So if there's anything that at any point that I say that jumps out to you, please feel free to interject and to respond appropriately, because, I believe in thinking together, thinking out loud together, and talking together, okay? So I kind of want to lead with a quasi-rhetorical question, okay? And the question is this: who are you? Who are you? And who must you be? Okay? Who are you being called to be? And then, who are you being? Who are you actually being? Okay, so I want you to commit this question to memory throughout our talk. And if anyone feels comfortable actually sharing, please go ahead at any time. Okay, but the question is this: who are you? Who must you be? And who are you being? Then my second quasi-rhetorical question for you is this: if you are in school right now, why are you in school? Okay, why are you in school? And then if you're not currently in school, right, if you've already completed your schooling, why did you go to school? Why did you go? And if your answer to any one of those questions that I asked is, I don't know, and or something generic like, well, I attended school so that I could receive a great education and, get a great job and become successful, right? If these are your answers to any one of these questions, then I hate to break it to you. You have not received an education. You have received an indoctrination. Okay? Because you should be able to tell me, right, at some point after you've completed your education, who you are, who you must be, what your core is, what you want to be. Because oftentimes, we succumb to the noises around us. We succumb to the voices, to advice of others who are projecting onto us who they think we should be or who they think we must be. And they mean well, right? A lot of these people can be your loved ones, your friends, your colleagues, your family. And they genuinely mean well. But then you have to ask, is this aligned with who you are? Is this aligned with your core? Are you letting ego and fear and comfort get in the way of self-aligning? And better yet, is your education inspiring you to really commit to who you are? And in fact, I believe that all educational institutions should have a course called Studying Myself. Okay? Because once again, the point of education is not to indoctrinate you. It's to ensure that you learn and you're being aligned. And I feel like I'd be committing malpractice as a professor if I did not tell you that. Because here is one thing that they don't tell you about your education. They don't tell you that education is actually teaching you to be a consumer instead of a creator, right? You're being taught to be a consumer instead of a creator. You're being taught to follow the rules, follow norms, to be a good student, and to cultivate your talent in service of other people instead of yourself. But let me tell you something, when you cultivate your talents in service of yourself, you're actually being in service to others. You are modeling by example. And so I challenge all of you, actually, to embezzle your education. Okay? Embezzle your education, embezzle knowledge. And what do I mean when I say that? So let me give you a legal definition of what embezzlement means, right? Embezzlement occurs when somebody is in lawful possession of another's property, okay? And they use that property, they convert that property for their own use or benefit. Okay, so as embezzlement occurs when somebody is in lawful possession of another's property and they convert that property for their own benefit or use. All right, so if you're already in lawful possession of another person's property, you already have consent. You have ownership over it. Okay? But here's the kicker when it comes to knowledge and education. You are already in lawful possession of your own education and your own knowledge. But it actually belongs to you. It doesn't belong to other people. Unless, of course, we're talking about intellectual property, which means something entirely different, right? Your knowledge, your education, that belongs to you. You already paid for it. You've already obtained it. You've already invested time and energy to have ownership over that education. And so everything that you do with that knowledge, okay, should be in service of your own potential. You should be converting it for your own use. You should be converting it in order to be a creator rather than a consumer. All right? And so I would like to offer you a framework that I think can help you internalize this a little more. And it's to think like an entrepreneurial lawyer, right? So that you are maximizing the benefit of your education. And so what does it really mean to think like an entrepreneurial lawyer? Well, let me break this down one by one, okay? So when we're thinking about what it means to think like a lawyer, ultimately, when you are thinking like a lawyer, you are thinking about the rules, right? You are becoming well-versed in all of the rules. You are mastering the rules. And not only this, you are mastering the exceptions to the rules. And that is important for very pointed reasons. You are treating every life scenario, right, as a scope, as a parameter, right? What is legal here? What is the norm here, right? What is the issue? What is the rule? How am I analyzing this? What do I conclude? And what does this mean for my next steps? Where is the evidence to say that I can or cannot do something? What are those rules? What are those exceptions? Okay, so you're always looking at legal precedent, right? You're always looking at laws. You're always looking at norms. You're always asking yourself, well, what can I do and what can't I do? And who says so? What jurisdiction am I in? What time am I in? Now, when you are thinking like an entrepreneur, right? You are thinking about actually how to circumvent those rules. You are thinking about how to think outside of the box, right? Maybe you're aware of the parameters, but then you're asking yourself, well, actually, how do I cultivate value that solves a problem, right? And that veers beyond the rules a little bit to create something new, to create new precedent? How am I championing what I believe in? How am I building something new? How am I building new structures that I can invite everyone to share in and to create alongside me? And so when you're thinking like an entrepreneurial lawyer, you are mastering this duality, right? You're not only becoming aware of the rules around you, the norms around you, but you're also saying, well, how do I make them work in service of myself so that I can be the change, right, that I want to be? But here's an even more specific framework, right, for you to help internalize this. Let's get a little bit more practical. When you are thinking like an entrepreneurial lawyer, you look at everything like you're running a business, right? And now you're thinking about how to protect that business. And what are businesses fundamentally? They are vehicles, right, for creating value outputs. They are vehicles for solving people's issues. And now you want to say, well, what is my moat? How do I protect that? This is where your lawyer brain, kicks into gear. But even better, when you're thinking like an entrepreneurial lawyer, the business, right, that you are creating, that you are thinking of, and that you want to protect, that business is you. That business is you. You have to treat yourself like the business. You have to ask yourself, well, what is my value add? What do I contribute? What am I good at? What are my strengths? What are my talent? As in any business, you have to figure out branding. You have to figure out how to market your services, right? You are communicating value to everyone else. And you are asking yourself as a business, right? If you are the business, you're asking yourself, well, how do I brand myself? How do I market? How do I reach people? How do I cultivate relationships? How do I maximize my social relationships so that people can know about my business? How do I engage in partnerships? What am I building? What am I creating? Where do my talents lie? What am I good at? What am I not good at? What is my system of self-governance? What is my mission? What are my rules? What are my non-negotiables? Right? What is comfortable for me? What is uncomfortable for me? What am I willing to learn in order to make sure that my business, or rather I as the business, I am optimizing, I am maximizing, I am being strategic. I am creating change in real time. And when it comes to your education, you have to think of your education this way. How is this education serving me? So that I, as the business, I become successful and not in service of other people, right? Not to go serve other employers, but to serve myself. Because when I serve myself, when I take care of myself, I can naturally take care of others. Right? So every time you are studying, every time you are learning a theory, right? Every time you are coming into an encounter with a concept, I challenge you to challenge it. Is this concept sound? Is it working for me? Right? Am I ingesting this passively, or am I being active? Am I using this knowledge, right? Am I using it in service for myself? Does it make sense to me? Do I want to create new paradigms with it? So that once I graduate, I know how to brand myself. I know how to market myself. I know how to sell to people that this is who I am. This is who I am called to be. This is who I must be. And this is who I am choosing to be. Not because you told me to be it, but because I am choosing it. This is what it means to embezzle your education. This is what it means to think like an entrepreneurial lawyer. every step of the way, again, you are pivoting from being a consumer. You are becoming more active. You are gaining more control over yourself, over your own system of self-governance and what you can become. Because here's another concept that I want to offer you, right? In the same way that power is never given, right? Power is taken, which means that your power is never given, it is taken. And fun fact, you have it already, right? At the beginning of this call, you already affirmed to me that you had it, so it's there. In that same way, your purpose is never given. Your purpose is taken. You must take it. Everything that you are dreaming yourself to be, you must take that. You must claim ownership over it. Right? Because to get a little more personal here, for me, I know that all of my degrees, right? Everything that, all the education that I have obtained, it means nothing to me unless I have learned how to use it in service for myself. Okay, so I am encouraging you all to do the same with your own education. It is great that you are pursuing it, right? But move a little bit beyond the grain. Think outside of the box there. You have the power to make anything happen because you are it. It is you. And before you think to yourself, well, I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If you are sitting in class right now thinking, I don't really like this subject, or I don't really like what I'm learning. I don't know if this is the path that I want. Let me tell you something. It's because you are not actually learning. You have not actually received an education. You have not committed to studying yourself to know what is it that I love, right? Once you find that thing that you love, that you feel that you almost can't breathe without, everything feels less burdensome. You have energy for anything because everything else that you do, right, is in line with obtaining that purpose. Before you can figure out what that purpose is, you need to figure out who you are. Think entrepreneurially, right? Think like a lawyer as well. Think to yourself, what are my own rules? And what rules am I going to create? Because here's the thing, when you're creating the rules instead of following them, you are creating a model by which not only you can live by, but by which others can live by as well. And the greatest form of power, right, is to create your own self-definition, is to create your own rules in such a manner that others follow it. And so that's what I really want you all to take away today. Okay? You have the power to be anything, to be anyone. And I have full faith and confidence that all of you in this call today can do this. All right? So are there any questions for me? What did I say at the beginning of this call? What did I say? I have the power to be anything and all because I am power. Do you all believe that?
Yes, I do.
Yes? Good. Good. And
It
if
would
you're...
be,
Oh,
it
yes.
would be, yeah, sorry to jump in. It would be most helpful if everyone could come on their camera, just so we, see who's in the room and we can start to ask questions. I don't want to embezzle your education.
That was wonderful.
I was going to ask how, during your own educational journey, how you embezzled your own university's resources.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that you ask this question because, and I love that you use the word resources. Because here's the thing, while you are in school, right, you should be taking full advantage of your university's resources. But to answer the first part of your question, while I was in school, I was a little bit rebellious intellectually, right? And I'll give the example of law school. I didn't fit into perfect scripts. And after a certain point, I didn't try to, right? I didn't check off traditional markers of success that said, you know, okay, I have to do law review, I have to do moot court, I have to do mock trial, right? You know, I have to get a V10 law firm job. Because what I found gave me energy was actually cultivating relationships, was being involved in extracurricular activities. I served on student body government. You know, I tried to serve as a mentor to incoming law students after me. And I found greater energy in cultivating my relationships. And so anytime there was something that I wanted to do that didn't already exist, I said to myself, well, I'll just have to make it exist. Right? It was as simple as that. When I wanted to study African jurisprudence, right, my law school wasn't offering any course on that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to create an independent study that allows me to learn African jurisprudence. And I'm going to find all of the texts that talk about African jurisprudence. And then I'll ask professors to sign off on this to supervise my independent study. When I had to meet an experiential learning requirement, right, clinics didn't exactly speak to me, you know, or going to do externships. That wasn't exactly what I was drawn to. So instead, you know what I did? I created a mentorship program that encouraged young Black women to pursue law school. That's you know, how I embezzled my own education. I looked to see, well, what is the precedent for this? Is this something that's typically allowed? And if it's not typically allowed, well, I'll just make it allowed. I'll ask, can I do this? Right? Because if you don't ask, you don't receive, and sometimes you never know. The answer just might be yes. Closed mouths don't get fed. You know, and sometimes we're trying so hard to fit into these social scripts that don't actually suit us, that don't actually align with who we are. And we never once think to ourselves, well, actually, what can I create that I want to exist? And that's how I treated my law school experience, truth be told. But the second part of what you said about actually maximizing your resources, let me tell you something. People are more inclined, you know, to take a chance on somebody who's already in school, who's a student, who is saying to themselves, listen, I want to build something. You know, I want to take advantage of all that my university has to offer, because they see ambition and they're saying, wow, I see myself in this younger version of who I could have been, and I want to take a chance on that. So while you are in school, absolutely learn what your school has to offer, right? Absolutely learn it. Absolutely learn it, and then take advantage of it. Because one thing that I told my students in the first week of class is that if all that you are doing is studying for my class and just reading books, I'm going to fail all of you. And here's why I said that to them. At least in the States, right? You are expending so much capital. You are paying so much money for your education. But even if you're not paying money for your education, you are paying time, which is actually even more expensive than money. Time is way more expensive than money. Always remember that. That is your most expensive currency, because you can never get it back. You can always get money back. You can never get time back. And so I told them, if all that you're doing is studying for my class, I will fail you. Because what you should be doing is that you should not only be cultivating your intellectual capital, study, yes, but cultivate your social capital. Who is around you, right? Who are your friends, right? Who are your classmates? Who are your peers? Who are your professors? Build those social relationships. Those relationships will get you farther, right? And lead you toward a path of financial prosperity sooner than just studying and reading your books and memorizing and learning to be a good student. And this is, again, what I mean by learning to be an entrepreneurial lawyer. You want to create optionality, and you want to cultivate all kinds of capital. You have your intellectual capital, then you have your social capital. And then you have to figure out, how am I going to convert this into financial capital for myself? Get out there, meet people, and study yourself. And that will lead you closer to success than just, learning about negligence or torts or Durkheim or Weber. And I'm using sociology as well here. All right. I hope that answers your question, but thank you for the question.
Yes, it did. It did. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, I see Imo Say has their hand up.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for taking the time. My question was about something. I watched a TED Talk in my first year of uni, and it was by this guy, Adam Langer. He's a successful lawyer by any metric, and one of the things he was saying was law school teaches you a lot of stuff, but in being a lawyer, the most important thing that he's found is having zeal and being a zealous advocate. So how can being an entrepreneurial advocate translate to zeal in terms of serving your client and the client's interest above your own in that sense? That's my question. Thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, no, of course, Imose, and I love your question about advocacy and zeal. And so here's the thing about being a lawyer that I think that most people don't spend enough time with. You have to learn to advocate for yourself, right? Before you can advocate for anyone else, you have to learn to advocate for yourself. And this is what I talked about with respect to being passive in your education and being a consumer of it. If you are not actually studying those legal concepts or really taking away that this is real life and not just doctrine, then you are limiting your potential to be a great advocate. Because for me, the way that I've used my own legal education, I actually don't translate legal education as existing only in the domain of practicing as a lawyer, only in the domain of, working at a law firm or just serving clients. I treat anyone who I meet as a potential client. I'm always thinking about the law. I'm always looking at situations as if I am a lawyer, right? And it served me well. And so when you're asking specifically about having zeal and being a great advocate, that starts with yourself. You have to be your own biggest fan and your own biggest protector, your own biggest advocate before you can be anyone else's. Otherwise, you're going to get there on the stand and you actually are going to inadvertently commit malpractice for your client because you don't believe in their case. Why? Because you don't even believe in your own advocacy and you haven't had practice doing it for yourself. And I think here's the thing with that. When you don't have that zeal, you are going to miss a lot of important facts, not only about yourself, but about another person, right? Whenever you're trying to build a case, you want to look at all of the facts, all of the information presented to you from every angle possible. And that can only happen if you are committed to yourself and thereby committed to your clients in that way. If you actually care about yourself, you care about your clients, and you're able to ask them questions that they might not otherwise ask themselves, right? And this is where, for me, like the whole notion of therapeutic jurisprudence comes into play. And therapeutic jurisprudence is about, actually producing healing outcomes through the law, rather than just treating each client as a sterile subject, as an object, by which you can practice on. You're actually stepping into their world and understanding who they are, because you've done the work of understanding yourself first. So you can ask them very trivial questions that might actually give you the smoking gun for a case. right? They might come in and say, you know, here's what happened. And they're going to tell you everything, right? They're because they want you to listen to them at the end of the day. They have an issue that they want you to solve, but they actually also want you to listen. And so not only are you listening to the facts that they are presenting you, you're also listening to what they're not telling you. You're also reading between the lines. You are asking yourself, okay, they told me all of this. They're clearly distraught. They need me to solve an issue, but what haven't they thought to ask themselves, and what haven't I thought to ask them? Right? They said that somebody, they were in a robbery, right? Somebody came up to them, you know, and pointed a weapon at them, and they froze in that moment and just let that person take all they had because they were in fight or flight mode, right? And let's say that in the process, you know, they ended up wishing that they would have done something about what happened in that moment. They felt powerless. So now you ask them, what did they have for breakfast that morning? Seems totally irrelevant to their case, right? But you're asking them a trivial question because now they're jogging through their memory to see, well, I don't know. I actually didn't eat that morning. Well, why didn't you eat that morning? I didn't eat that morning because I'm stressed. Well, why are you stressed? Well, because I go to a job every day that I don't love. Well, why are you doing that? Well, because I'm trying to make other people happy. Okay, why are you trying to make other people happy? Is it because you don't believe in your own happiness? So when somebody came and robbed you, you let them take everything you have. And that's not your fault. But when you're telling me that you're wishing you would have done something, the reason why you didn't do anything about it is because you didn't think to protect your happiness. You're too busy living for other people so that the next time somebody comes and robs you, you won't let them get away with it that easily because now you have something to defend and protect. And I'm using this very metaphorically because you want to get inside somebody's psychology, right? In order to be able to help them and in order to ask them questions that they might not have thought of, right? And now how do you best present their case? When they get up in front of the stand, the witness stand, right? And opposing counsel is saying, well, actually, this client wasn't robbed because they gave consent to the robber to take everything after all, right? Did they not give consent? They said, listen, you can take everything from me. That is consent. That's not robbery. And then you get up there and say, well, actually, my client was coerced. They saw a weapon and they gave up very easily. But then what would you have done in that situation? Would you have persevered or would you have given up? Just because you consent to a certain kind of life, right? Just because you consent to somebody taking from you, somebody robbing you, are you actually offering your consent? Or are you being coerced in so many other ways that you did not think to examine? Being on the stand is like being a participant in life. You have to dig deeper beyond the facts. And you can only know to dig deeper beyond the facts if you understand the facts of yourself. And that's how you cultivate this zeal. That's how you become a great advocate. I hope this answers your question, Imose.
It does very fully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have, oh, Stephanie? Okay, cool. You can go.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Okafor. I'm an ASJ alum. I went to Howard University. I graduated in 2022. I'm getting my master's in marriage and family therapy. So a lot of what you're saying resonates with me. I think a lot of people struggle with self-discovery because there's so many roadblocks on the way. So could you share with with us some roadblocks you encountered and just how you were able to manage overcoming that or navigating those roadblocks? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Stephanie, thank you for your question, number one. And number two, congratulations on your master's. Remember what I said about embezzling education. But that's incredible. Very proud. So you ask a question about roadblocks and how I have overcome those roadblocks. The truth be told, I am still overcoming those roadblocks, right? I am still learning in real time to overcome those roadblocks. And let me present it to you very specifically. I chose to walk away from the law, right, in pursuit of who I needed to be. And that is not an easy thing to do, right? Trust me when I say that I think all the time about, how my peers might view me, or, they might think I'm a little nuts to have walked away from, perceived power or prestige or status to pursue such an unknown terrain, something so unfamiliar, right? But what I discovered, right, in my first month of practicing law is that this law practice wasn't it for me. And I only loved it, right? I only loved big law because of who I worked with, right? And because I was allowed to be who I am. Thankfully, I had colleagues who encouraged that, and I'm so grateful to them, But I didn't trust that I could find that everywhere. And I consider myself fortunate. The only reason I loved law practice was because of the people. And at that point, the question became, well, what do I actually love? And 5 years from now, right, when I wake up, do I want to be in regret of not having done everything that I said that I wanted to do? So yes, the roadblock to self-discovery is real. There are so many real roadblocks. There are financial roadblocks. There's the roadblocks of what your peers are going to think of you, what your parents are going to think of you, right? The sense that everyone is watching you to either see you stumble or fail, right? That is real. Like let's keep it a buck. I'm not going to pretend that, that isn't there. But you know what the antidote to that is? You need to find that crazy dream, right? That dream that says, you know what? I don't care what anyone thinks because I need to do this for my life. And if I die never having done this, I will hate myself for it. And so at the point that, that regret and that self-resentment outweighs, maybe embarrassing yourself or making mistakes or having people laugh at you, that's when you know that it is worth pursuing. Because people will laugh at you whether you're successful or not. People will laugh at you whether you stick to, the more traditional paths or not. But you know who's not going to laugh at you? Yourself. Right? And in fact, actually, let me walk that back a little. When you can learn to laugh at yourself and say, yeah, I made a mistake, and I might fail at this, but oh, well, this is worth the ride. That's when you know you're in the right direction. And I would really encourage you to listen to your gut, right? I know it sounds very cliche, but that's actually what I'm using to help me navigate what I'm currently doing. I discovered that I love teaching. That is what gives me fire. That is what gives me fuel. And beyond teaching, I want to scale that teaching, right? I want to bring that teaching to the world, and I know what I want that to look like. And I know that the dream is crazy and I don't care. But that's what keeps me grounded, because guess what? That dream is giving me the energy to make the sacrifices I need to make to get there. Things that I once looked at with fear, I now look at with annoyance. Because I know this is worth it. I know this is what I'm being called to do. And I know because something in me lights up whenever I think about that dream. I get so excited about it, right? That I almost want to cry, because it's like, this is it. This is what I have to do. And so I encourage you, whenever there's noise trying to drown out what your own self-discovery looks like, listen to it, right? Listen to your gut. Listen to what your own inner core is saying to you. What makes you light up and what makes you say, I don't care about these roadblocks. It's worth it to me. Because another thing about the people who laugh at you, they're telling on themselves. You know why? They're saying that they're your biggest fans. They're saying that they have enough time in their day to worry about your life and what you're doing, you know, to laugh at you. And think about that, right? If you are happy with your life and you are that busy, you're not going to be worrying about what I'm doing with my life. But the fact that you have time on your hands means thanks for making me a priority, right? Thanks for being my fan. Wow. You know, so I would say there is always going to be pressures at every juncture. Convert that pressure into your fuel to say, you know what? I know who I am. I know who I must be. And now I am choosing to be it. Okay, so that's how you can think about this, Stephanie. You know, there's always going to be roadblocks, but listen to yourself. Listen. How old are you, Stephanie? Do you mind me asking?
No, I'm 24. Yeah.
You are 24. You are so young. Do you know how young you are? Do you know how enviable that is? In fact, I'm going to embezzle your age. We're going to trade ages here. All right,
Okay.
I don't mind. You know, Emo say, are you willing to be a zealous advocate for me to take Stephanie?
I 100% am. I 100% am.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. See, building social relationships here, building an apparatus of people. So, Stephanie, you're 24. You have so much time ahead of you, and at the same time, you don't have that much time ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
But you have a lot of time ahead of you because you have a lot of time to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. That's what's most important. But from the sounds of it, you're committing to a path. And it is okay if at any point you say to yourself, I chose this path at this point in time because it made sense to me. And now it no longer makes sense to me and I'm going to pivot. You're allowed to change your mind. Right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
right, people think that they have to be one thing all their lives. You don't have to be one thing all your life. You can be anything and.
Both and.
Exactly. Not either or, right? Both and, like you said. I have the power to be anything and all because there are so many dimensions to you, right? There are so many dimensions to you. You are a person of plurality. You don't have to be one thing all the time. You're allowed to change. And the fact of the matter is, yes, people are going to judge you. Yes, it's going to be scary. Yes, you might look at your bank account and go, oh boy, what are we going to do here? But you'll figure it out if it matters to you. You will figure it out. Okay? I hope this helps.
It does. I changed my career already. I studied finance in undergrad, so I'm doing something very different now.
Excellent. No, 100%. And you know what? I love that. You were in finance and now you're pursuing family therapy, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Guess what? If you ever decide, you know, maybe family therapy is not it, and you're like, you know what? Maybe I do want to go to finance. You're going to have more clients than your other counterparts because you've navigated how to pivot and how to expand your skill set. And now you're not only going to be the financer who teaches people about how to properly invest their money. You're going to hold their hand while they cry about the fact that they've lost so much money, but you're going to help them get it back, right? Just like Imose said, being a zealous advocate for them in all domains. This is what I actually love about legal frameworks, by the way, because once again, you can transpose that learning into any domain. my legal brain is still on as a professor. That never left me. And so even as you are in family therapy, you might have found, okay, finance wasn't it for me, but now I can actually bring the skill set that I learned in finance to family therapy. Because when a client is telling me, I don't know that I can afford this, you can tell them, well, here are your options, right? And by the way, don't place too much monetary value on the investment that you are making to make yourself better. Think of it this way. You're looking at this through short-term gains when I want you to look at this through longevity, through long-term prosperity. You are making a sacrifice now. You are breaking the bank, right, to receive therapy with me and to get treated. But that is going to pay off. The return on your investment is going to produce dividends. It is going to multiply. Because if you keep going as you are and you are not feeling well, that is going to come back to bite you sooner and you will lose. You're more likely to lose everything than if you take a break, you pause, and you make that investment now. I'm just making this up, Stephanie, but I imagine that's how a conversation with your client would go.
No, there's the sunk cost fallacy. So that's really where people struggle, where it's like, I've already invested so much, but it's like, if you stay, you keep losing. So just cut your losses now and keep it pushing.
100%. 100%.
Thank you.
Of course. And I appreciate your question. Good luck with everything. By the way, I'm here as a resource too.
Thank you so much.
This is to everyone on this call. So, always open to questions and happy to discuss anything more. But I know that 3 minutes is left. I'm happy to continue taking questions. I just want to make sure, with the moderators that we're still good to go.
Yeah, timing is okay. Thank you so much for your time. Yes. I'll use host prerogative.
Does that work?
Awesome. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. And then next, I really liked what you said about how power is taken. It reminded me of this meme that our Nigerian president, Bola Tinubu, has, where he was in a boardroom and he was like, with power, you have to take it, grab it, and snatch it. And it's little wonder he's the president. He's achieved his own goal. So that's something of note. And then next, I think social relationships are so important. In my undergrad, I took this course called Marriage and the Family. And here I am, finding this realignment. And then a former student of ASJ is now studying marriage and family therapy. There are not many people who make those decisions to study, the family unit and like marriage, the institution. And then I'll just go into the questions, you asked at the beginning. So the first question, who are you? Who must you be? Who are you being? Why are you in school? Why did you go to school? After this session, I've come to the realization that we all are power in our bodies. And with this realignment I found in education, I am power creating an education institution, an education organism for people to be self-directed learners. And I think this is a very interesting first session. So my questions now for you are, when was the aha moment that prompted you to start thinking entrepreneurially? I feel like you've touched on the journey, but when was that moment that you were like, okay, I've had enough, like entrepreneurial journey? And then when did you realize what it was that you really loved?
Yes, no, thank you. Thank you for this question. It's such a powerful question. So the journey to entrepreneurship had been brewing inside me for a while. I will say that. But I let fear get in the way. You know what I mean? I thought, okay, well, here's a path that's being given to me. You know, it's the most surefire path. It's a path to financial stability, right? Working in big law, that's a path to financial stability and status and prestige. And I don't have to think too much. But then I thought, I began looking around at the partners at my firm, and I said to myself, a lot of the partners at my firm didn't stay associates at big law firms. They went out and they cultivated a skill set that they could specialize in, right? And have a niche in, and then came back as partners. And that stood out to me because even if they weren't running their own law firms, they were still being entrepreneurial in how they cultivated their value, how they positioned it, you know, and said, let me go out there and get real hands-on lawyering. And then when I'm ready, right, bring it back to a firm. You know, and one of my supervising partners who's remained my mentor and sponsor, you know, he was a good example, an amazing example for me, you know, and how to think about this. And so once I was leaving the firm, you know, again, I really sat with myself and thought, well, what do I like to do? You know, and I stepped into teaching. You know, I became a faculty member at a few institutions, but I did this for a year and started learning about, you know, the subjects, you know, the theories, the areas, the domains that I really care about. And then sometime in the summer, right? So a year after that, this past summer, while I was in Ghana, a moment came when I said, wow, I am back home. I'm in the place where it all started, you know, the place where I was born, where my people are, here with my family, you know, and looking at all of the sacrifices my parents made and how so many people in Ghana, right, were inching, you know, to get away and to start over elsewhere. And they were entrepreneurs in their own right, working day in and day out to make ends meet and just take life into their own hands. And my parents kind of did that same thing. And I thought to myself, there is no reason why I shouldn't be doing this for myself. There is no reason why I can't do the same, especially with all of the resources afforded to me. And I am not returning to the States without having a plan in mind, right? To really start being entrepreneurial in my own right and to live my life the way that I want it to be and to build something, right? Not just work for other people, but to actually build something. And this is how the Elizabeth Tweneboah Foundation kind of came to be, right? And Elizabeth Tweneboah, you know, the name is after my grandmother, Elizabeth Tweneboah, who really was the original lawyer in the family. You know, she was revered in our community. She knew how to interact with people, to talk to people, to mediate, to understand justice in different ways. She was a woman of power, right? Everyone called her "Oh lady," right? And the way somebody described it to me, their experience of her, they said that when that woman spoke, everyone listened. She had so much power. She may have been old and short, but you could just feel her. You could feel that power. And I'm borrowing her power for my own life path, right? To know that if this is already in my blood, there is no reason why I can't erect institutions. I can't erect something of value in her name and in our name. And that I'm not, once again, I'm not going back to the US to just be another consumer. I have no excuse at that point. So I realized that this summer mostly. That's when that realization truly formed, right? Truly crystallized. It had already been brewing, but I pulled the trigger and said, I'm making this happen now. And, you know, I haven't really spoken this out loud yet, right? Because I keep this dream, you know, close to my heart, but I think it's time to say it. I want to build a university. that is what I want to do. And not just any kind of university, but one that is teaching people about their power, right? Teaching them that they can be anything that they want to be. In my mind, that is a form of justice. That is a form of lawyerhood, right? I have a quote, up on my website and my LinkedIn banner that says, to me, defending people's highest potential, right, is the essence of what it means to be a lawyer. But I have converted that into being a teacher, a professor, an educator, right? And saying that I want to defend people's ability to be the best version of themselves. And I see education as the vehicle, right? And I see that zealous advocacy that Imose talked about, right? I'm using that zealous advocacy that I have as a lawyer to be an educator, to defend people's image of themselves. Because when we don't protect our own self-image and our own dreams, people are more likely to commit robbery, Imose, right? And co-opt those dreams. And that is how you give away your power. Once people have a say over who you are and who you must be and are telling you what to look like, right? How to imagine yourself, you've given away your power. And that is fraud. And that is the kind of actual embezzlement we do not want, right? And so I have committed myself to an entrepreneurial path, and I would say more specifically, an intellectual entrepreneurial path that is about creating a new school of thought that allows people to rise into their highest selves. Because if we are creating a generation that is saying, well, I don't believe in myself enough to pave my own way, what kind of world are we wanting? Everyone has inherent value. Everyone's born with it. They have the power to really be who they are. They have that power. And the minute that they don't believe it, that's a tragedy. And so now I'm in the business of making that come to life. And I know that for myself, I don't dedicate myself to doing what my grandmother did. What am I doing? What's the point of all of this education that I received? What's the point? It means nothing. I had been riding the train in New York City one day, creating content, right? I'm trying to develop my brand, et cetera, et cetera. And I was taking a video of myself saying, everything good is coming your way, right? Everything good is coming your way, speaking those affirmations. And then the second affirmation was, never let anyone tell you that you are anything other than remarkable. And something very interesting happened in that moment, right? Because New York teaches you to not care. You're allowed to be whoever you want to be. And so even if people are around you watching, you really don't care. So I was taking these videos, and then all of a sudden, it occurred to me, I'm creating content, for a broader audience that's digital, when my audience is right here. And so after I took those videos, I actually asked everyone on the train, I'm like, did you hear what I said? Never let anyone tell you that you are anything other than remarkable, and everything good is coming your way. And conversations sparked. I actually created new relationships that day with the people on the train, and you could see that they felt touched by those words, and I was equally touched. And I know that this is what I love to do, right? I love to empower people, and that is what I'm devoting my life to do now. But that was such a beautiful moment for me that told me that when you are doing what you're meant to be doing, right, and it feels right to you, you're headed in that right direction. Something as simple as that felt so natural to me. So this is the long-winded way of saying, Olafare, that, being in Ghana this summer, being with my family and seeing all that has been sacrificed, encouraged me to say there's no more excuse. Looking at how my grandmother lived her life, God bless her, You know, I didn't get to know her for too long, but I always remembered that the way that woman laughed, there was so much wisdom, and I wish she were still alive to tell me all that she knew, but she was a woman of power. And I care about my own power, but better yet, I care about making sure that that power amplifies the power of others so that they are learning about themselves, right? And they are becoming who they are meant to be. And especially as a people, we are most vulnerable, right? We are most vulnerable to having that power co-opted, to having our image co-opted, to reading books that are not invested in the truth, right? But they're invested in a narrative that keeps winners winning and keeps those who are really the true sources of power doubting themselves for generations and centuries, when the answer truly has always been us. We don't need books to tell us that. It's already felt. And this is what I mean by if you listen to yourself, you already know the truth. Be careful what you study. So I encourage you to study yourself first. Okay. I hope this, I kind of go into tangents, but I hope this is helpful. You know, I hope this is helpful, right? I take education seriously. I take it seriously because anyone can present knowledge to you. And I always tell my students that even take what I say with a grain of salt. I have a title, right, that qualifies me to teach you, and you don't know better than I do. I'm actually learning from you too. And so and this goes back to, you know, again, what you also mentioned about social relationships, Olafari. We have to have each other to learn from. Our education is all around us. All around us. And if we listen closely enough, right, we will become masters of ourselves and of our destinies. So.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your wise words. And I'm happy like this has been such a gripping first session. So thank you so much for your time. The max time I put this out was 6:15.
Yeah.
Looks like we're at time. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. Are there any last minute comments or questions? Oh, it looks like Illumidon has one.
Hi, my name is Elumi.
Illumi, hi.
I had a quick question just to backtrack a little bit about what you said concerning all the different dimensions that we have and how to make that into a reality. And I just wanted to ask what that experience was like for you, allowing all the parts of yourself and all your talents and gifts to shine while also keeping like keeping up.
I think I lost the last part of what you said, but I think I understand the question, right? So essentially, how do I ensure that, you know, I allow all dimensions of myself to shine? Here's how I did it. I stopped worrying about specializing. I stopped saying, okay, well, I want to be a professor now, so I just have to be a professor. I want to be a lawyer now, so I just have to be a lawyer. I said, you know what? I can be all of it, because those are all parts of my journey. You know, so every time that I'm teaching, here's how it happens, right? To give you a more practical example. Every time I'm teaching, I'm not just teaching sociology or criminology. I'm injecting law into those subjects as well, right? Why hide that? You know, sometimes, you know, my course sessions with my nursing students or my criminology majors turn into professional skills course sessions about the law and about, you know, how to navigate ethical situations, or, you know, how to think about this legally. Right? Exploring different hypotheticals, even sociologically, right? And so I don't hide it. You know, I just let it be. I understand the fear there or the confusion there as well. You know, well, how are people going to understand me if I'm all of these things? They'll catch up. They need to learn how to walk and chew gum, right? The fact that you can be so many things, right, and keep up, great. Because guess what? You're going to attract so many different people who are drawn to that about you, right? So they might not just see Illumi, are you in school, Illumi? Are you?
Just graduated in May.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations. What was your
Thank
major?
you. Communications, and I also did marketing and business.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so Illumi just graduated, right? Illumi, you just graduated. People, then you're multiple things. You've been a student, right? You are a specialist in communications, you're a specialist in marketing, and you know a little bit about business as well, right? You are all of those things. And people can now look at you and say, well, I'm actually drawn to Illumi for her communication skills. But I also need Illumi's help with business, and I'm drawn to her for that. Wait, I need both of those things. Illumi's good at both of those things. This might help me too. And or I actually wasn't interested in attending school, but watching Illumi do it, now I want to do it. Or I wasn't interested in pursuing business. I was actually originally in communications, but and that's why I was drawn to Illumi. But now I actually want to explore business too. Right? I think it was Stephanie who said both and. You can be anything and all. Don't let the fear of, well, I need to translate well to people. You know, I need people to understand me. No, you don't. You don't need people to understand you. You need to understand yourself. That's first and foremost. And in fact, once you understand yourself, people will actually believe in you, right? And they'll do the work of understanding you because they find you very fascinating. Right? So let them do that work. You have different work to focus on. You have bigger fish to fry. You want to be a communications specialist, you know, a marketing expert, you know, a businesswoman. You've just graduated from school, so you've done the thing. You can speak in all of those domains, and that is your work. Other people will catch up. So just let it shine the way you know best. Okay, I hope this helps. I'm trying to be mindful of time. I don't want to go off into my.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
It helped a lot.
of course.